This is one of the most intriguing stories I've ever heard, and I've been covering and studying Supreme Court appointments ever since I was at UVA graduate school.
The problem is that the court is so polarized. The framers did what they could. They've got life tenure, their salaries can't be cut, and that turns out not to be much insulation, right?
And I've never heard a story that has circulated such as this. That is, that there's the possibility that there was some kind of deal struck between President Trump and Anthony Kennedy, that if Anthony Kennedy would move off the court, that the president would put one of his clerks in place.
The president has nominated to the bench a number of former clerks to Justice Kennedy. I think some of that might have been purposeful, which is to signal to Justice Kennedy that we will choose someone to replace you that you approve of. There is some reporting that they've been encouraging Justice Kennedy to retire, and one way they were doing so, at least indirectly, was signaling that we will appoint judges that are your protégés or your former clerks. And so that would lead Justice Kennedy to maybe think, well, it's okay to retire now because the court will be in good hands.
I think the conservatives are more ideological than the liberals, but they're both bad. The court functions best when there's a range of views, when there are votes actually in play, willing to listen to the arguments. And to a large extent, we don't have that anymore.
But there's also a story, and who knows whether it's true or not, but that it also involved Anthony Kennedy's son, Justin, who works at Deutsche Bank and has been involved in President Trump's dealings with the Russians, and that obviously then would link to the Bob Mueller investigations. Whether there was a deal struck or not, I would say that at the very least we know from public statements of President Trump that he certainly charmed Justice Kennedy by speaking so highly of him and making, I think, Justice Kennedy feel comfortable leaving the bench, knowing that he would get perhaps one of his clerks in his place.
I think he's not above picking a judge or a nominee whose view of executive powers is quite expansive and whose view on whether you can prosecute the president is quite narrow. That would serve this president specifically if the issue came before the Supreme Court of the United States.
I don't think that Judge Kavanaugh, to my knowledge, has written on presidents pardoning themselves. What he has written on for law review articles is whether a president should be subject to civil or criminal investigations. But it wouldn't surprise me in this instance, given that Donald Trump knows he's being investigated, that he wouldn't choose someone who, by all accounts, has the proper pedigree and has written that presidents should not be subject to civil or criminal investigations. That would be the icing on the cake, it seems to me, for Donald Trump's choice of Brett Kavanaugh to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. Whether there was a quid pro quo on the issue of President Trump and the investigation into his Russian dealings and whether that had an impact on the 2016 election, I don't think we have enough evidence for that. But if it is true, would definitely be unprecedented.